Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week, we have Frank Bazzani once again. How you doing, Frank? I always called you Frank Abbott because I'm so used to seeing like Cameron's thing up there. But Frank Bazzani joining us. How you doing, Frank?
I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We chatted a whole bunch of things off air before we started, or even some on air, but not as part of the show. Before we dove into this, but today's episode is pretty much going to be all about the Uncharted movie. Both of us went and saw that this weekend. I've certainly also been playing Horizon Forbidden West since it came out, but I'm gonna hold off on talking about that until we've got some more of the team members playing it, as well as some more hours under our belts and stuff. So yeah, we're just gonna do kind of the normal thing we do with Spoilercasts, where we will do kind of our spoiler-free thoughts on Uncharted first, and then there will be a very clearly delineated, like, here's where we're diving into spoiler territory. Before we hop into that, though, a little bit of housekeeping for you. We have other shows that you may enjoy, like That Bond Show, which Frank and I were just talking about, because in the timeline of us recording these things, we were about to record our Moonraker episode, so I was talking with Frank about that before we hit record on this episode. But you can go check out That Bond Show every Saturday as a kind of bonus mini-series podcast right now over at youtube.com/thatnerdysite, where Logan and I hop in and talk through Bond movie by Bond movie. This coming week's episode, is it this coming week or was the one that just went live? It's the one that just went live.
Yes.
So the episode that just went live that is available for everybody is Live and Let Die, which Frank joined us on, as well as Cameron. We had basically all four of us out there talking about Live and Let Die. So go check that out. Our best of lists continue to trickle out onto the site, so you can go check out those. We also have our other bonus kind of series going on right now, Friday Night Dying Light, where Cameron is playing through Dying Light 2 every Friday evening at circa 6 p.m. Mountain time, I guess, Arizona time. So you can go check out his latest foray through that game as he progresses through the story. And then lastly, I want to give a shout out Jazz. We talked about this in last week's episode, that Jazz was launching a game. Jazz has now launched a game called Retrograde. It is a dice game with a retro arcade theme. Her company Resonim is making it. It is now on Kickstarter, so you can go back the game if you would like. And there will be a link in the description for that. So shout out to Jazz, and shout out to her making moves and making games. Hooray. And then lastly, if you like what you hear, please remember to rate, subscribe, like, review, all those things. I said that completely out of order. But do all the things you can do to help algorithms on whatever platform you are listening to this podcast on. We would greatly appreciate it. Okay, so now, without further ado, Frank, let us dive into some spoiler-free thoughts of Uncharted, the movie, first. So yeah, what did you think of Uncharted?
I really liked it. I guess I'll say too, like, I am a huge fan of the game series, so that I think it leads partly into it. Like, I don't think you need to be a fan of the game series to like the movie, but I think that, like, if you are, I think that might even help, just like buy in on like the easy kind of things that they do. But overall, I think it's just a really fun movie, and kind of like what I was saying, my kind of one sentence review is that it's like the modern day National Treasure replacement. You know, it's like we used to have these movies like National Treasure and The Mummy, and of course like Indiana Jones, and like I don't think those are super necessarily common anymore. So it's really cool to just get this like fun action movie that also involves like tomb raiding and puzzles and stuff like that, and just kind of that fun like character back and forth. But I really liked it, and I think it's a fun just action movie that like I could show like my parents and be like, hey, like, look, this is just a fun movie. You don't need to know anything about these people, and they'll explain everything to you like from the beginning. And then there's the little nods and things that make me go like, oh yeah, like make me want to jump and like be happy about it.
Yeah, I very much agree. I think like it I had a great time with it. It was a fun movie. It is a fun Uncharted like adventure, and obviously the Uncharted series, in its nature, is derived from Indiana Jones and stuff like the Mummy and like those kinds of adventures of like we're gonna follow a bunch of clues to find a treasure that's loosely based on some kind of historical stuff. That's what the games are. That's what this movie is. And so, like, it coming back into movie form, yeah, of course it's going to feel like an Indiana Jones or a Mummy or a Tomb Raider, kind of like those movies, those vibes. Because if it didn't, it'd be like, well, then you completely missed the mark because that's exactly what these movies are. And yeah, it's fun. It does it kind of creates this alternate version of Nathan Drake and Sully and Chloe, because we don't have an Elena Fisher yet. Spoilers for
Yep.
the spoilers that like is out there in the casting. Obviously, Elena not in this movie. This is first adventure with Nathan Drake. So it kind of plays into a little bit of like the history that's like established in Uncharted 2 and 3 and 4 and stuff like that. But this is like pretty much their first go. And maybe they'll get more adventures. Who knows? And maybe we'll get to see from there. But I too, obviously, big Uncharted fan. We talked about the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection last week, which I had just finished recently. So Uncharted very fresh in my mind. And they kind of like get to play this alternate universe version of Uncharted. I think Tom Holland very, very fun as Nathan Drake.
Oh yeah.
Sure, young, and
Yeah.
that's a little weird and stuff. Mark Wahlberg, terrible as Sully, but he's Mark Wahlberg, so you know exactly what you're gonna get with Mark
Yeah.
Wahlberg. And I will say, like, even though he is not the Sully or a Sully that I'm engaged in, he and Tom Holland do have like fun banter and fun back and forth and a fun relationship and dynamic throughout the movie that I really enjoyed. Sophia Ali as Chloe Fraser is certainly a standout for me in this movie. I think she's a lot of fun. And in fact, like she is enough fun that I am a little disappointed at when they take her out of the movie for certain points. Because I think like she could have been a more of a presence than she already is. I will say, like, I think one of the issues with a lot of these, and with it, fairly enough with the Uncharted games, is like the villains are a little lackluster, in large part because we don't spend time with the villains a ton. Like we're with Nathan, we're with Nate, we're with Sully, we're with Chloe. Like we're not spending a ton of time with the baddies. So they're basically just set up as another obstacle in the quest for whatever the treasure is. But as for like the quest for the treasure, if you've seen the trailers, they're on a quest for Magellan's gold or whatever. And it's like, yeah, this is about as far fetched as everything else they've done for these treasures. So sure, and it gets them to it gives them the groundwork for a few fun set pieces to kind of get from point A to point B, and let's do a fun thing here at point B, and now let's get to point C, and let's do a fun thing here at point C. Like they do a pretty good job, and so yeah, it was a good fun time. I don't think I really had any there were no points in the movie where I was like, well, this was a waste of time or anything like that.
Yeah.
The biggest, like really my biggest grievance is I'm not a huge fan of Mark Wahlberg, so I would have preferred other people being in this movie, being that character in this movie. But if this is the version of the movie we had to get, and it had to be a Mark Wahlberg movie, it could have been way worse. It could have been Mark Wahlberg as Nate, which was like one of the original plans. And fortunately, the movie was like in development hell for so long that like he aged out of that version of Nate into a Sully kind of character. But yeah, it's certainly not nearly as bad as it could have been. And it leaves me, excited for the potential of a future movie. If anything, there were like, I almost wish it had done more with the fan servicey kind of things. We'll talk about this a little bit more in some of the spoiler stuff. But like there are a few obvious like, oh, this is very clearly kind of an idea pulled from the games or something like that. But like for the most part, like they don't go nearly as deep into that as like other series that kind of have done this sort of thing do, I think. Um, but yeah, like overall, it was a fun adventure, fun little romp, fun way to spend a couple hours. I don't necessarily know if I need to go out and like see it again in theaters, but I'll be happy to check it out or something. Down the line on Netflix or something down. When it comes to streaming, that'll be a fun thing to throw in and just be like, yeah, let's have a fun adventure. Like, I mean, in the grand scheme of like I would say for me at least, this is better than half of the Indiana Jones movies. Because I do not like Temple of Doom and I do not like Cursed
Crystal Skull.
Crystal Skull. Yeah. So it's in that ballpark of it better than both of those things for me, and certainly less problematic. So yeah, it's a fun little game, and or fun little movie. Any final thoughts before we dive into spoiler territory there?
Yeah, just quick kind of final thoughts there. I agree with a lot of what with you kind of additionally added in. Like I do think Chloe's a huge standout in this movie. I do really want to see a sequel kind of in this universe, even with these same characters and like Chloe and like Nate and Sully. But I also do agree with you that like yeah, like Mark Wahlberg is very much just like Mark Wahlberg and like definitely not like a Sully. But even in the end, they still kind of got me with like their relationship and the way it built up. Like it was definitely a vibe to me of like the movie. Like in the beginning, I was like, I don't know, man. And then in the end, I'm like, you got me. I'll come back. I'll see the sequel. Like you got me. Like they got me. And that's that's just yeah. I think that's pretty much it. But I pretty much just agree with kind of everything. I think we're pretty much on the same page.
Yeah. All right. So those are our spoiler-free thoughts. If you haven't seen Uncharted and plan to, feel free to kind of drop out now and then come on back if you want to hear what we think about the movie in full kind of spoiler fashion. If you have seen it, or if you aren't going to see it and don't care, stay tuned because yeah, we'll dive in and kind of talk about our spoiler thoughts. Let's say now. So what like we talked about this a little bit beforehand. It's not like because they don't dive into like all sorts of fun references or whatever, like it's not like a spoilery kind of, it's not one of those kinds of movies where like, oh, if you know what's going on, it's going to ruin the experience for you or anything. But were there any things in particular that you thought like in the spoiler category oeuvre of things, anything really jump out at you as like, oh, that was a really cool thing?
I know there's probably more we'll talk about, but one that actually made me really excited was Nolan North.
Mhm.
Like when they walk up on the beach and Nolan North is just chilling there, and I was like, hell yeah! And then they put in the joke where he's like, "What happened to you?" And he's like, "I fell out of an airplane and got hit by a car." And he's like, "Something like that happened to me once." And I'm like, hell yeah, Nolan North. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that was a fun little bit, and it was like I had seen like I think I had actually seen that clip like the day or something that I went to see the movie. Because like he tweeted like the account tweeted it and then he kind of quote tweeted it or whatever. And so like I got to see that scene like out of context of the movie, but I had also kind of I had known that his cameo was going to be in that kind of vibe because he'd already like shared, photos of him and Tom Holland in that like very beach set kind of thing of like, okay, so he's definitely involved in the movie somehow, and this will be a fun little thing. He's in it like more than I was anticipating. I thought it was just going to be like I thought it was just going to be the what happened to you guys, and then like they say their response and walk on, and maybe you get a look from him. But yeah, the fact that they like they linger on him and give him that like, oh yeah, something like that happened to me once, like as like and I think the kind of funny guys kind of talked about this in their review as well, but the idea of like if you don't understand that reference, if you're just seeing Uncharted, you're just like, that was a very weird guy for them to run into at the beach. Why is he important? They don't know that he played Nathan Drake in the games. So yeah, just it ends up but I will say like in the context in the context kind of floating off of that, I loved the and I thought they might do this as well, just based on how much they'd shown us the like cargo plane sequence in trailers and stuff
mm,
like that. I thought they would do the Uncharted 2 kind of storybook thing of like they're gonna start there and then they're going to flash back to, a few weeks earlier or whatever, and then we're going to catch up in the sequence. So I appreciate that they did basically that same kind of vibe, just with this sequence instead. And I loved that, yeah, like the little cap on it, because I was definitely, having seen that sequence enough times in the trailer, I was very curious how they were going to get out of it, how Nate was going to like survive this fall after being hit by that car. And I thought they had a fun time with it. And kind of the button on that scene being the Nolan cameo was, absurd but fun. And yeah, like the fact that he just kind of directly calls out the fact that it's pretty much the same set piece from Uncharted 3. It's like, yeah, it's fair enough. Good call. They're at least acknowledging it instead of just trying to like pretend that it's completely original or something.
Well, because that's what's one of the things that had me worried about, like just based off the trailer, is because it looked like, hey, this is just the best of Uncharted. Like
Yeah.
we just pulled all the cool stuff and we're gonna put it in one movie, but it's also the Drake origin,
Mhm.
so it's before all that happened, and obviously it's kind of its own offshoot. But it was like that. I was worried, like, is this just gonna be like all the best set pieces, like back to back to back? But I think they pulled it off a little bit better than that, and they still have room to do like other really cool Uncharted-esque set pieces, like from the game.
Yeah.
And one of the moments that I thought was that kind of almost had me worried about Tom Holland is right in the beginning. He kicks that dude in the face and then said, like, apologizes. He's like, sorry.
Mhm.
But that totally came off to me as like Spider-Man. Like, it was really hard for me to divorce the like Tom Holland from like Peter Parker Spider-Man, especially because I felt like that exact line delivery was so Spider-Man. Like, if Spider-Man kicked a dude in the face and then was just like, sorry.
Yeah.
Like, but then I was thinking in my head, like, I could picture Nate doing that, but I feel like it would be more of that cocky thing where he'd kick the dude and then be like, sorry. Like, like, I feel like he'd be more like fun about it or like cocky. But then I think, like, as the movie got going and really kept going, I really think like Tom Holland got into his own as Nate. I think like Mark Wahlberg came more across as like not necessarily Sully, but as that like the role he's trying to play is like the shady dude that's like somewhat getting attached, but also doesn't want to. And like, so that was why like they had me in the end, but there was moments in the beginning where I was like worried about some of the characters and stuff.
Yeah, I think I echo that sentiment in that you give Tom Holland a young, good-looking character in New York. Obviously, he's just doing the same voice basically as like as his Peter Parker. I will say, like, especially because they make a point of him like exercising and working out shirtless a couple times. Like,
Oh yeah.
dude got very jacked to make this movie. So shout out to the work he put into it. But yeah, I think it's especially given that 2 months ago Far From Home came out and has become one of the biggest movies ever. Like it's going to absolutely be hard to like divorce those two characters from one another, with him there at the in the same way that like Mark Wahlberg just playing the same character Mark Wahlberg always plays.
Yeah.
You could have said this was his Transformers character, and I would have been like, yeah, that checks out. But I will also say the other thing that kind of like I think we've all kind of like ever since he got cast, we've all been like, he's really too young to be playing Nathan Drake, unless you're going to do like the flashback, and this is like Uncharted 3, him meeting Sully for the first time, thing, and they kind of do that, but they do
Yeah.
because they like the first flashback we get is back to young Nate and Sam at the orphanage, a la Uncharted 4. To kind of like, it's the thing where, hey, they can introduce that Nate has a brother from the beginning now instead of 4 games in. And the thing that like annoys all that segment, that subsect of like Uncharted fans, they can rectify that here, in this case. But the fact that like that kid playing him is I guess supposed to be 10 years old or whatever at the time, and then it does like it's not even like a let's cut to 15 years later or whatever. It's like we're gonna end with him sad staring at the camera or looking down or something, and then we're gonna just kind of morph that into modern day Tom Holland. And it's like, yeah, both of those characters are really, really young looking. Like I don't look at Tom Holland and think, oh, 15 years has passed.
Exactly.
because of just how young he looks. You know, God forbid that he you know have good aging. Um, but it's still like that aside, like he's still fun, and I think especially if they want this to be a franchise kind of thing, the other thing you and I were talking about beforehand is like Bond. You know, if he's going to be playing Nathan Drake for a number of years, you want to still have him be able to do fun actiony Nathan Drake things in 7-8 years and not think, please don't break a hip, Mr. Holland. uh so I think like casting that young in the same way, like, you know, Harrison Ford, not looking forward to his next turn as Indiana Jones because he just shouldn't be doing that stuff anymore.
Oh yeah.
Um, uh, like I'm okay with a young Nathan Drake. Um, it is that introduction between him and Sully, and it is just it's so it is a reinterpretation of the like introduction from 3, obviously a different adventure kind of thing, and like Nate has not been like doing the Uncharted kind of thing prior to this. He's been a barfly. He's a barfly, like a con man, a pickpocket kind of thing. Very good at it. I almost was expecting. They didn't do it obviously, but I was almost expecting like the girl at the bar that he's kind of like flirting with in the opening sequence there. I was expecting to find out that she was Elena at some point down the
Mm.
line. Obviously we don't get that, but I thought that would have been a fun little like, you know, nod or something, or she had to like take a call and go basically do her, you know, production whatever.
Jeff the cameraman comes over with his giant
Exactly, yeah.
overhead camera.
Yeah, like that's who she's waiting on. But we don't get that. Instead, we get kind of the again, like there is a little bit of a, like the greatest hits element because we get them going to like an auction house, a la Uncharted 4. But I think they had like fun recontextualizing even that scene and those ideas. Obviously, like the Antonio Banderas character, a very different villain than the Rafe Adler character of Uncharted 4. But it does like even that he still has kind of like the other woman, or the woman very much has like Nadine Ross kind of vibes to her, of like she's the head of these like this mercenary crew or whatever. So it's almost like I was almost like, why didn't they just make her Nadine?
Same.
I imagine they kill her off at the end, so that's probably why they just let her be a villain. So maybe that's why. But if they do end up like, you know, if this does end up turning into a franchise, going to be really weird to introduce Nadine as a character somewhere down the line and be like, you remember that woman from the first? Like, just ignore the fact that both of those characters have the exact same stuff going on. But you know, whatever. I did appreciate the swerve that I was not expecting. Like one of the things that we talked about a little bit before we started recording that you can kind of like spoil. You know, that when she like just slits Antonio Banderas' throat mid monologue kind of thing, I was like, oh, I was not expecting that turn, but okay, that I guess she's going to be the big bad from here on out. And thank you for coming, Antonio Banderas. You added a little bit of gravitas, you added a little bit of star power, and see you next time, I guess. So that was, I think that was maybe the biggest surprise for me, in terms of like thing I didn't expect going in. Because as we touched on, like if you've seen the trailers, you've seen a lot of this movie. You've seen a lot of the beats, all that stuff. So yeah, what were you thinking, or what did you think about that kind of element of it?
I think it's interesting. It's definitely a way to kind of, like you said, give it another layer, and like something that's like the only thing that's not really apparent in the trailer, because they don't show you that. And then even though when you do watch the trailer, you're like, yeah, he does just disappear at some point, and then it's just the kind of the mercenary woman that kind of takes over.
Mm-hmm.
But like it's not like I'm just kind of like whatever on it, because it's like I didn't like love him as a villain, and it's not even because of his acting. Like his acting's great because it's Antonio Banderas, but like it's kind of like you were saying, like he's just that bad guy.
Yeah,
like he is just bad guy, rich family that has like was involved in this way back in the day, which is kind of cool. And then he's just like, the only kind of part I liked more with him was actually when he hires Chloe on top of hiring the mercenary. I was like, that's cool. Like I like that. But then when it just gets to this thing where he kills his dad and then he gets killed immediately, like it's just this weird kind of like thing where like every time you spend time with him, like you only spend a little bit of time and a lot of it doesn't really mean anything, because then his dad gets killed and he gets killed and then she just like takes over and then she gets killed and it's just like it in a way it's very Uncharted.
Yeah.
But it's like, but it is just like a thing where for like a movie I'm like I almost wish they had built this up more. And obviously like I would almost I guess rather spend time with the heroes, but if we did spend a little bit time with the villains and maybe there was more like infighting or her like plotting against him, that could have maybe been like a bigger thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I feel like he has the scene at the auction house with Nate kind of like introducing the backstory of the cross or whatever. Um and then like he and Sully have like their bidding war. And that's the only time he interacts with them throughout the movie. Like everything else he's doing completely bereft from them. And so it's weird that like, you know, to think of him poised as the big bad, when obviously like, and I guess like part of that is by design, that like he much more they much more interact with, Braddock, Tati Gabrielle's character. But yeah, it was just like, this was a twist I wasn't expecting, but okay, I'm here for it. Like Antonio Banderas has done a few things. The last thing I feel like I saw him in, very unfortunately, was Doolittle, where he like he it's not at all in the same way of like he's not a bad guy in Doolittle or anything, but he shows up in Doolittle and it's just like, oh shit, that's Antonio Banderas. And then like just as quickly, like they've moved on from him, he's gone, and the rest of the movie goes on. It's just like, I guess he's just wanted a good payday.
Yeah.
Whatever. You do you, Antonio Banderas. It's always nice to see you in these things. But yeah, it was a very weird like, oh, okay, that was an interesting choice. What did you think?
What almost
oh yeah, go ahead.
kind of it almost kind of has that air of like you were too expensive, Antonio, so we're gonna kill you in the second act, and the product is gonna take away the rest of the movie.
Yeah. What did you think of the what I would call like the Uncharted puzzle? Specifically, I think kind of all the stuff with the crosses in, oh, where are they, in like Venice or something like that? In wherever in Italy,
Barcelona, I think.
But yeah, but you're right, Barcelona. Yeah. Somewhere in Europe that has churches. That was where it is. What did you think? Basically, like the second act of the movie. What did you think of kind of that aspect of the story and how they interpreted those elements of an Uncharted game into the film?
I thought that was really cool. Like, I think they really nailed that. Like, because that totally feels like something that could just be like a puzzle in Uncharted.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, like, I think it's cool the fact that you have to like break up into two groups, like one above and one below.
Yeah.
And then the cooler idea is like a lot of times with like these Tomb Raider and Uncharted things, like the people who built this elaborate thing didn't build it, like it has changed in the hundreds of years. So I think it's really cool that it's like on top of the modern city.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why like not only is the stuff they're interacting with kind of there and below and it's like decrepit sewers and stuff, but then Mark Wahlberg's just walking around in a Papa John's.
Yeah.
like I thought that was super funny. And like and it's just on the one hand it's a cool puzzle and set piece, and then on the other hand I think it works for like good comedy and then character moments, because like I think it really emphasizes the fact that like they do not trust each other, because it's like the thing where like he doesn't want to drop the cross down and he doesn't want to, like, it's this, none of them trust each other to do like anything in that moment, but that entire puzzle is built off of trusting your fellow man.
Yeah I really enjoyed it as well. I thought it was a very fun kind of like novel translation from game to movie, especially because if you played that sequence out in a game, you wouldn't get to see the Sully perspective like we get to in this. You'd only be kind of driving, and you'd hear like over the radio or something occasionally Sully kind of chiming in and be like, "Where you at, kid? I'm above you," or blah blah blah. So I liked that we did get to see kind of, it was almost going with another video game reference, it was almost like the It Takes Two kind of vibe from last year, Game Awards Game of the Year last year, where you basically like you're working together in tandem, but you might be on your own completely different paths. And I also loved the what you kind of touched on of the yeah, when, we're running through Libertalia in Uncharted 4 or something like that, that can be a wildly, ornate thing, that, nobody has seen, it hasn't changed. Or I guess, maybe a better example is like the puzzles in like Ireland or whatever, that happen
Oh
like
yeah,
under the
yeah.
cemetery, kind of the first sets of puzzles on Uncharted 4 that are like completely destroyed because of time and corrosion and stuff like that. But they still exist, like they've been untouched by man kind of over the years. Whereas like this is like the sewers of Barcelona or whatever. And so yeah, like the hell path has turned into a rave location, like a dance club kind of thing. And that led to, a bit of great comedy. I thought it was gonna like uh, we'll dive into this, I guess, a little bit more. But there was an element of like I thought that was where we were gonna get like a little bit of like the sex appeal, kind of like Tom Holland and or Nathan and Chloe, kind of like like really kind of hamming it up on the dance floor or whatever. And like we get like a beat of that or something, but then immediately it's like, oh, they're caught and they're having to like find their out or whatever. Um, so it's almost weird that they didn't play more with like the romance between, like, I guess they tease a little bit here and there. But like still interesting. But yeah, like
Like I think they want you to get those vibes, but they definitely don't really like go all in on it. Like they could
yeah.
have definitely spent a little bit more time with that because then I kind of believe it where he's almost like falling for her, and in a way she's almost kind of into him.
Hmm.
But it doesn't like I don't think they ever really get there
Yeah.
like in a way that they could have, especially even when they are there in the hotel later. Like I didn't really like I get that they like each other, but not like each other, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Like like there's another version of this movie where that absolutely could have been like a they get together in that hotel or whatever, and then Chloe still betrays him and goes off and whatever. Like it could have very easily been that, and they didn't do that. And part of me is like, maybe they didn't want to do that because then it would add like an extra layer of conflict that they don't necessarily want when they introduce Elena down the line or something like that. Who knows? In the same way that like Uncharted 2, like everybody hated Chloe at first because like she was the obstacle keeping Nate from Elena. So like them kind of introducing this in reverse, maybe they're just trying to like curb some of that stuff beforehand or whatever. But in addition to the hell stuff, yeah, obviously the fight scene in a Papa John's was a really dumb product placement thing that pays off into a fun sequence of like, yep, I guess this yep, they just put up this Papa John's and kind of kept the aesthetic of whatever's there. Just put some giant plexiglass over it. But yeah, like
Bulletproof. Like they really went all out on that plexiglass because he
yeah,
shoots it like 4 times
right,
and then
yeah,
throws her through it.
that was some heavy duty stuff. People, Papa John's patrons. I think that is the commentary that they're making, is like they don't trust Papa John's patrons to not try their damnedest to get through that just to touch mosaics on a wall. Um, but yeah, so I thought that sequence was like fun. It's gonna like, it is always going to be the less flashy thing compared to like the cargo sequence or the like flying pirate ships at the end of the movie. But I did want to kind of touch on it here because I thought it was a fun kind of interpretation of that element of the games. I thought they did a really good job of kind of like bringing in the puzzle idea of it, because there's also even I guess that also has there's like clock tower ish kind of bits
Yeah.
to it, a la like, I mean that's in I think multiple Uncharted's, but um so yeah, really cool how they play with that. But segueing into the uh the more action heavy sequences. You want to talk about the cargo plane sequence first?
Yeah, yeah, because I did like it, like, and it kinda going back to what you were saying, it's cool they pulled the, like, Uncharted 2, kinda starts with that, and you get to see more of, like, Drake's perspective, and then when we get back to that point in the movie, it's more from like the inside of the plane and like Chloe's perspective.
Mhm.
And like I thought that was cool because the fact that you get to see all the other side with Chloe, and then even with her driving the car that hits him, like that like made me like the cargo sequence with Drake like more.
Yeah.
Like the fact that it's like these two set pieces that are kind of happening, and then you come together, and it's because it's even funny because when she starts the car and starts driving out, I'm like, well, you know what's gonna happen, and then of course you just see Nate like jump in, and then he just gets slammed, and like that was like a funny moment to me because I don't know if you had this, but like when in the trailer and especially in the movie, like the car engine is like revving and the tires are squealing, but there's like I looked in it and I'm like, is anyone driving that? And like when you see the inside, it doesn't look like there's anyone in there.
Mhm.
So then it's like funny to then find out like, oh, that was Chloe, like who like has a cool badass sequence where she like shoots and then pulls the parachute and then like shoots the window and dives in, and then she just like drives that out. And like I thought that was all like I thought that was really cool and like elevated that as like a cool set piece.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't know if they deliberately did the same. I mean, it is another Sony product, so maybe they did the same thing with Far From Home, where they like digitally erased her, just like they did a couple Spider-Man, from trailers to kind of keep you guessing as to like what's going on there. I feel like I had seen in a, like because that was another sequence. Like they pretty much released like a whole one of the whole versions of it. It was probably like the opening version or whatever. But like in one of them, like I had gotten the idea that it was Chloe driving kind of thing. Um and so I was like, oh, okay. Like I but also like in that context, or like in the trailer context or whatever, I was bereft of the context of Chloe had betrayed them and started working with the bad guys and stuff, and is now trying to flee working from the bad guys because that whole arrangement changed. So like it added a new fun extra element to it. And because yeah, like the sequence that we see at the beginning is like everything from Nate's perspective to like him falling out and then like doing the arm grab, and it cuts immediately to the flashback of him and Sam, and here we get to see kind of the payoff of no, that was Chloe grabbing his arm, so he doesn't die. And yeah, like I really appreciate how they resolved that, of like they get to the crate that she shot out because she saw and registered that it had a parachute. So like her objective was always going to be that crate. She didn't know that she was going to have to also save Nate on the way there. And I like that they also do it with like so little time left that like parachute flies, gets them to like a safe probably ish speed, probably not ish speed.
Yeah.
But then like almost immediately hits the water, but then like you come back up and they're like floating along. So yeah, like I really appreciated again tying it to the Bond thing that we're doing, having just watched a similar like parachute kind of sequence in a Bond movie. I thought this one was like more engaging, more fun. Certainly also more CG, absolutely, but still a good fun time, and I think a good way to resolve that, compare especially as like a variation on the sequence from Uncharted 3. Like obviously it still has a lot of same touchstones and stuff, but they brought enough new to the table with it that I was not disappointed, even though I had seen so much of it in the trailers and stuff. So let's then pivot to kind of the like, I guess final set piece of pirates flying by helicopters and stuff, like pirate ships flying through helicopters. That absurd level of nonsense, which is admittedly like the one set piece that like this movie is doing that wasn't, lifted directly from the games. What did you think of that sequence?
It's cool. Like it is like this really big spectacle sequence, but and it's fun, but it is one of those things that it's like a little bit dumb and like over the top, which obviously again Uncharted like that they literally fit the bill. But it is one to me where I'm like, I don't know, maybe we could have done something else that was like more action oriented or more like gunplay and more less like big set piece of these two boats kind of like slamming and fighting, but also just more of like what you would get in the games where you like fight through like bunch of people, and like because I did realize like Tom Holland nails all the physicality moments, I think, but like he only uses the gun for like one scene, and
Mhm.
like I guess they didn't want him just killing people all over the movie like Nathan Drake typically does. But like I could have used a little bit more of like that kind of in it towards the end, especially. But like it is a fun set piece. It's cool. It makes me laugh like when they have the two next to each other, and then like her whole mercenary crew just knows how to be pirates, and they all swing onto the ship in the perfect sequence.
Yeah.
Like they have this they practice ship boarding like in
Yeah.
their like
It
in
in midair shipboarding, yeah.
yeah. Uh,
Yeah, I will say that I was not bothered by Nate not like racking up a high body count in this. Especially because like it has become such a meme of the
mm,
games that like they've just started like completely embracing it with like trophies titled ludonarrative dissonance or whatever, where it's like you get this trophy for killing 1,000 people. um and so I appreciated that, like, especially in the context of this is Nate's first adventure or whatever. Like, he's not, by his nature, he's not trying to kill people or whatever. Anything he's doing is he's doing in self defense. And yeah, he's not, necessarily happy about it. Like the I'm sorry kind of like Peter Parker moment at the beginning. Like, yeah, that's like one of the first people he's killed. He didn't really mean to do that. It was just that was the only way he could survive in that moment. Um, and so I think, um, like it didn't bother me that at the end of the day he only like actually kind of takes out a few people, and almost none of them are with the guns. I did love that they put him in the like Uncharted attire. Like that was a great, nod to the games kind of moment, especially because the like it was one of the few times they actually used the great Uncharted theme to kind of like come in as he throws on the holsters, um, to complete the look. Um, so like I appreciated that, and I appreciated that like that's how he got there, and now it has established that for a sequel or something like that. In the same way that like I want to say it was the Angelina Jolie Tomb Raider, right? That basically like didn't give Laura her double guns until like the end of the first movie. Like they didn't give her
yeah.
her iconic look until the end of the thing, but that meant you had it for the second movie out. So I think that's kind of what they're doing here with this like origin is, hey, we're introducing a broader audience, hopefully, to this character, and this is the lasting image you're going to have of him from the end of this movie. So that's who you will see kind of next time around, in the same way that like Bond isn't always in a tux, but you kind of always think he's in a tux.
Yeah.
um those kinds of vibes. So like I appreciate that. And then like on top of that, I could absolutely see that sequence being played in the games. Like
Oh
especially
yeah,
in the
yeah.
spirit of, like the train sequences at the, in Uncharted 2 or in Lost Legacy, where it is like you're like this train is on this track and like there is a giant world that has been designed around it and stuff. They would like Naughty Dog would absolutely build this in a way, or I guess the car sequence even in Uncharted 4, like the chase sequences and stuff like that. Like they would absolutely build this out so that you're, you know, doing a little bit of like cover action shooting on a boat, taking out a few guys, then doing a little bit of melee stuff or stuff with a sword, taking out a few guys, and then a ship comes crashing into you, and you like, and then you have the the quick time event where you have to light the cannon to shoot the other thing. Like they would absolutely do that. And so I thought like honestly that nailed the like Uncharted as a absurd silly video game aesthetic for me,
Yeah.
in a way that I was, I thought was very fun. As stupid as it was, I was having a fun time watching them, and the way they used those ideas, like the fact that they gave kind of that little bit of like swashbuckling pirate thing, and so that like it's not Nate shooting people in the chest and them just like dying of bullet holes or whatever. It's Nate clocking a guy and knocking him off a ship, and he crashes into the water below or something like that, or push him off, and then the mountain that like
Oh,
they just
yeah.
flew by definitely kills a guy. But it kind of, it makes it like in the same way that like I don't think of Indiana Jones as like a violent mass murderer, even though he definitely kills a bunch of Nazis in some of those movies. Um, I thought they did a pretty good job of like balancing that, like the body count that this character is racking up, in a way that means we're still going to like him and not be as questionable again, like of his motives and operations. Um, so yeah, I had a fun time with that. Again, just absolutely batshit absurd. And I will say though, I appreciated they because I had the exact same thought that Nate has at the end of that movie of like, well, if the ships go down, we can just come back and salvage them. And seeing the Indonesian boat or whatever coming, or the Philippines, I guess is where they were. Seeing that like coming in as the boat kind of crashes and starts to sink. It's like, yeah, nope, I guess they are gonna they are gonna get to it first. But maybe they don't know about the other one. So maybe you could go circle back around to that one, and grab the wreckage from that. But I will say, as I alluded to earlier, like that's where I was most missing Chloe, was
Mm.
in the third act when they kind of like they send Chloe off on the goose chase
Oh,
or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
and then she just doesn't come back into it until like the little like jokey kind of thing at the end. Um, I
Because
I was very much expecting like her to be the one to face off against Braddock or something like that. And they didn't do that. They didn't have her do that. And so I was like, I was sad because I think again Sophia Ali does a great performance in general, and I thought it would have been another fun dynamic to the end of the movie. But it is a an Uncharted game or an Uncharted movie, so Nathan Drake got to be the star. I get that. What were your thoughts on that?
yeah, I'm pretty much with you because I definitely miss her in kind of the end of the movie there, and they kind of show her on the boat, and then they kind of get that fun like little like thing where where Nate tells him like, yeah, I may have given her the wrong coordinates, or I let her steal the wrong coordinates, and so he's like, hey, you're finally getting it, kid. Like I like that, but that could have also they could have had a similar thing where like if their helicopter went down, and then it's like that thing where she comes in the boat and is like, hey guys, like, and it's that thing where they have to like work it out, and like you get what I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
like I think they could have done even besides the fact that she could have been more of a force in the end. I think they could have even done more with her, like coming in to save the day, or even just like pick them up and get the crew back together. But instead, she's just like weirdly in the boat below them, following them, like at the end of the movie, and then like they just fly off into the sunset. And so, like, I mean, I wonder if maybe that was to your, I think something you said earlier too, where like we don't hear from her in like Uncharted 2 and Elena gets introduced, but then she comes in like Uncharted 3 or something, and it's like, oh well, we haven't heard from Chloe in forever, but here's Chloe, you know?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing with the series, and on that we can kind of maybe dive into like the what like pre-credits stinger and then like the mid-credits scene, because obviously like one of the things we didn't touch on obviously is Sam, introduced much more early in the narrative here, but still is also like killed off screen kind of things. Um, but it turns out he's not really dead. On him, before we dive into that, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording. The fact that like we had seen Nate figure
Oh yeah,
out
yeah.
the postcard, light the thing under the postcard to find like the hidden text in the trailers, like very much for me was I was sitting there for an hour and a half of the movie waiting for Nate to figure that out because I already know Nate's going to figure that out. And they even, they introduce it in the flashback of Nate, kind of like this little thing that Nate and Sam did. So the fact that he doesn't think to do that until much later, was silly and absurd or whatever. But yeah, Nate, like the little tease at the end that Sam is alive in some jail somewhere. Panamanian, Philippine, who knows? But he's alive in some jail somewhere, so they can continue to, they can make, part 2 about bringing him back, or they can bring him back at some other point, who knows. And then the mid-credit sequence, you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and before too, but like with Sam, I thought that was kind of cool that they like kind of confirm that he is still out there because that's what I actually wondered. Like when they kind of explained that he was with Sully and then he got shot and then Sully just like left him behind. Like
Mhm.
my inclination, just based off of the history of the games, was like, yeah, I wonder if he's not dead and he's just in jail because
Yeah.
that's kind of like what happens between Nate and Sam is
Yeah.
like, and he leaves him behind, and then Sam's just been in jail this whole time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why, like, and then when they kind of confirm that, I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's at least they're going in like somewhat of that direction. And then the postcard he's writing to Nate is like, watch your back. So like
Yeah.
something is happening, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's very much like, I appreciate that they're kind of like setting that up sooner. It being the big difference now between the movie and the games is like, in the games, Nate saw Sam get shot and start to, or like fall and die. So he's going to be much more inclined to believe that his brother's dead. Whereas here, he's only hearing it secondhand. Like, admittedly, he does hear it from an eyewitness, and then the person who shot him, who basically like taunts him of like, you're going to join your brother, whatever. It's like, well, he would rather not die. Um, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of like how they fold Sam back into the narrative, and how and when, I guess. Uh, yeah, because it could very much be like, okay, well, he's been established now, so we've retconned that from the games, so we can still do these 3 other big adventures from Uncharted 1, 2, and 3, and then come back to Sam in Uncharted, the movie version of Uncharted 4 if they want, or something like that. I don't think they'll
Yeah.
do that, but I would say that the mid-credit sequence does seem to be like almost a tease slash setup for the El Dorado kind
Yeah.
of case of the first one. Wouldn't you say?
No, yeah, no, I'm 100% with you there because actually when I saw it with a friend of mine and when we were on our way home, we were kind of talking about that, and because they mentioned it's like a Nazi map,
Hmm.
and he was like, are Nazis in any of the games?" I had to think, and I was like, the first one, because there's a Nazi submarine that they're on, and they're all that, and then I was like, and then Sully double crosses him, so I don't know if they're gonna like include that or not, but like I think they're going in that direction, or at least like hinting and are going to try to take some of that. So that's interesting that they are like building towards like an Uncharted 1-esque thing. But I think you can do a lot with that, some of the narrative, and without even taking the set pieces and stuff. Like I think you could take the narrative of Uncharted 1 and then expand on it and do like a bunch of really cool stuff in this universe, a la like the flying pirate ships.
Yeah, that's and yeah, the in addition to like the Nazi map or whatever that he's asking for, he also the guy he's there with refers to like Roman Navarro, or not Roman
Oh, I
Navarro,
didn't even.
um or whatever, like he basically name drops the villain from the first, not the, because like ultimately he ends up like dying before like his main henchman or whatever, because I think Navarro's like the last guy you fight in there.
Yeah, on the
um
boat.
yeah, but
Yeah.
like the guy that is financing the whole thing and ends up getting killed by the curse of El Dorado or whatever, like that's basically who gets name dropped. So spoilers for potential spoilers for that movie they end up going that route. That's the thing. I'll be very curious. Obviously, also they finally pay off Sully not having his mustache the whole movie by giving him a silly mustache and having Nate comment on it.
Yep.
Um,
Ruined in the trailers.
exactly, shown off in the second trailer, because everybody in the first trailer was like, why the hell doesn't he have his mustache? Like that's he gets a mustache and a cigar. He gets the two things that define Sully.
And he's wearing the shirt too. He
And
has
he's,
like the Hawaiian
yeah,
shirt open.
he's
Like,
wearing he's wearing the shirt that I believe the shirt is the Uncharted 3 like flashback shirt that he's wearing
mm,
like when he meets young Nate, I
yeah,
think.
because that's what I noticed. Nate is wearing the red and white shirt,
Yeah,
which is the flashback Nate shirt, and I thought that was really weird because I
yeah,
was like, "This isn't a flashback. This would be the most up to
yeah,
date, right?"
yeah,
Like, I thought that was really weird.
yeah. Um, but yeah, so like I'm excited for that potential, but then they also like they end it with like a, oh, somebody has caught them.
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
in a like this will be paid off in an eventual sequel if an eventual sequel gets greenlit kind of thing. So I'll be curious to see kind of where they go from there and the Elena factor of it all and how that does come in and how they do that if they do end up casting Zendaya as Elena Fisher. Just
I'd be
just
cool with that.
completely just be like, yeah, sure, like it's a Sony movie. We're just gonna lean full on that. You guys are already
And
making the comparison. Fine, we don't care. You guys love Tom Holland and Zendaya. We're gonna just do more with Tom Holland and Zendaya. That's fine.
and and then we replace Mark Wahlberg with Jon Favreau. We get the whole crew
There,
back together.
there you go, perfect. Or Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, yeah,
Make
yeah.
Robert Downey Jr. Sully in the future, like recast him. That actually would be pretty good. But yeah, it was a fun little tease, and again, I'm excited and interested to see where they go with it. Um, the thing I would be most curious about that I think I started to touch on is like I think one of my big issues going back to like the first couple Uncharted's is that they just do supernatural stuff at some point,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like I don't know if that's going to work in a more grounded world. Admittedly, I say grounded as if flying two pirate ships fully intact across the sea, is a grounded in reality kind of sequence. But I'll still be curious if they do like, oh, these cursed sort of werewolf Nazis or whatever the things from Uncharted 1 are, like undead things. I'll be curious to see how or if they incorporate that, or if they just kind of like figure it, like they just do a different turn on it. And yeah, that's ultimately I had a fun time. I'm very
Oh, yeah.
curious to see where they go with it moving forward. Any other things to touch on?
Yeah, I have a few random ones
Yeah,
that
sure.
didn't quite fit in anywhere, but I did like the at the end. Yeah, I would like to call this the Too Fast, Too Furious moment where he has like pockets ain't empty cuz, and he
Hmm.
starts like Nate Drake starts pulling out all the gold that he pocketed while they were on the ship. I think that's a great fun moment, and like especially again, it's like these great character moments between them.
Yeah.
Um, and it, of course, like I said, totally reminded me of Too Fast, Too Furious because I was waiting for that. That's what I thought the backpack was going to be, and
Yeah.
obviously that kind of ended up being more of like Sully's decision moment.
Yeah.
But I thought that was going to be that where like they lose the boats, but it's like, but pockets ain't empty because like we got this backpack. um, the other fun thing I noticed too, I don't know if you caught this, but when Tom Holland pulls out his trunk of all the different like
Mm.
stuff that Sam left him, there is a Naughty Dog sticker on
Yep.
the thing. So that was just a fun little like I was like, hey, for all the Naughty Dog fans out there.
Yeah. And what I didn't see this because like it's also admittedly a reference I don't even like completely catch or think about when I think of Uncharted, but the kind of funny guys talked about the idea that the bar that Nate is working at the beginning is like the kitty get wet or something bar, which is basically
Mm.
a nod, whatever it is, it's a nod to like an ad lib line that Nolan North said as Drake in one of
Oh,
those
that's
fights or
cool.
something like that. So it's like like they go with like super obscure little references. Um but yeah, I thought it's still fun. Um, yeah.
Uh,
Trying to think if there was any others that jumped out at me.
I
Like,
did also love
yeah,
the joke with the cat, like the running bit that kind of turns into, where
yeah.
because it's like it's that Rocket Raccoon moment where he's like, "And I need a cat," and then
Hmm.
he's like, "What's the cat for?" And he's like, "That's for you." Like,
Your
and
life
then
is
he
really
Sully,
sad. Yeah,
and then I love that again. It comes back like he references the cat, like when he's like, "The guy on the app was supposed to feed the cat, but he hasn't texted me back." Like, and then Tom Holland's like, "I don't know what's more cute, the fact that you care about the cat, or that you said the man from the app."
yeah.
Like. And then I love it where it kind of comes full circle back in the post credits when he's like, "You were supposed to be here yesterday," and he's
Hmm.
like, "Oh, Mr. Whiskers, like, did you know you can't get on a flight with a cat?" Like, and he has the cat with him. Like, I thought that was like funny. Like, of course, that is like unrelated to anything in Uncharted, but like, I thought that was like a funny character thing.
Yeah. I was like I don't know if this was like I feel like it had to have been a specific choice as a reference. When they are like booking flights or whatever, they do kind of the like red arrow moving across a map kind of thing. Except here it's like a globe kind of, it's the Uncharted, version of this or whatever, but it's basically an evolution of that iconic, like, here's how we're going to show that Indiana Jones is going from this place to this place. Um, like I saw that come up, I was like, oh, that's a fun little nod.
And
Um,
similar to that, he kinda when he's talking about the nuns, he says something similar to, like, "Why did it have
oh
to be
yeah,
nuns?"
yeah,
Like, and I was like, "Oh, that's like a cute little, like,"
indeed, yeah. Gabriel Roman is who's getting set up. Da, 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 da. Trying to think. Any others? Yeah, no, I don't see anything else here. But yeah, just lots of fun in this movie.
Yeah.
A good fun time. It like it's it's interesting. Like, I would be very curious what this movie is like for somebody that hasn't seen or hasn't played the Uncharted games, like what
Yeah.
that vibe is like for them. Um, but I think like the Tom Holland factor really helps it. Again, I think Sophia Ali really great as Chloe. Mark Wahlberg is Mark Wahlberg, so your mileage may vary. Um, but yeah, it has enough fun little nods to the character and stuff like that. One thing that I was thinking about, um, that like this is another like super deep cut thing that I certainly wouldn't expect them to do, but if they had done it, I would have laughed my ass off. Would have been if in any of the many times Nate is in the water around somebody, if he had screamed Marco and waited for somebody to say Polo, because that is a recurring trophy among the games, and like an Easter egg among the games of like you jump into a pool and Nate will say Marco, and somebody will either say Polo or will not say Polo, and it'll be a whole thing. And there's basically a trophy every time you do and I think it even carried it, like I think it started in Uncharted 2, and I think they do it again in 3 and 4, and I think even in Lost Legacy they have like a variation on it, that is like the Chloe version of it or something. So like if they had managed to sneak something like that into the movie, I would be like, yes, please, thank you. So hopefully they do it with Uncharted 2. Yeah, gonna
That's
be
how
interested to see.
dedicated they are, that they're like, "This didn't show up to Uncharted 2, we're not gonna put it in until Uncharted 2."
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Yeah, all around, very fun movie. Any final thoughts there before we wrap up, Frank?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything, but I definitely would like to see a sequel. Like, that's just kind of the only other thing I'd throw out there too. Like, it's funny how like the way it ends, and especially even what we're talking about. Like, well, I wonder where they'll go and what they'll do and what does this mean. Like, I would really like to see a sequel to this movie, and I think we're probably going to get one because from what I saw, like this movie was doing better than they already projected on opening weekend, and it already got like 50 million. And then, like, for me personally, as someone, I'm like, if we got Venom 2, they have to make Uncharted 2. Like, if they are all in on Venom, they need to be doing more Uncharted, you know?
I mean,
Like,
yes, I would like to say that, but also Venom made a crap ton more than 50 million at the box office. So,
yeah, yeah.
like, there's a difference in ROI on that. But yeah, I think like I would not be at all surprised if Sony Pictures just completely builds their next 10 years around Tom Holland between more Spider-Man movie and Uncharted. I think it is their version of an Indiana Jones. And as you kind of touched on, like we don't have a ton of those in the marketplace these days. So if you can knock out a fun B movie adventure like this, every couple of years or something like that, do it. Have fun with it. Go nuts. So cool. Well, we will wrap it up there. Thank you, Frank, for joining me to discuss all of our Uncharted movie thoughts. Let's go around the metaphorical table with any plugs we might have. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to give a plug or shout out to there, Frank?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure if it'll be live at the time you're hearing this, but if not, it should be live pretty soon after. I edited a video for our overall sites game of the year list. So again, if that's not live at the time you're hearing this, it should be live on our YouTube and our website, that nerdy site, pretty soon after.
There you go. Excellent. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will give a shout out to, in addition to that Bond show and all the stuff we shouted at the top of the show, our Let's Plays. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we do Let's Plays on youtube.com/thatnerdysite. Currently, we're in the throes of my replay of Life is Strange with the remaster that came out recently. But I did also do a bonus episode this week of my first hour and a half, hour 40, almost 2 hours probably, of Horizon Forbidden West. So you can go check that out as well if you are so inclined. Game's real good. Game's very fun. Definitely looking forward to putting more time into it this week and talking about it in the future. So yeah, go check out all that fun stuff. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.